All right, here's the thumbnail. That's going in that. This is an AW71 out of a 760, out of a 940. Can't remember. Anyway, it's going to go inside of this 94 940 turbo. This is the car that we did the oil pump rod bearings on. And now it's time for the transmission. I believe it's just the torque converter making a terrible noise, but I don't know. I just don't know. And it would be silly to only replace the torque converter on a high mileage car. It's just a safer bet to swap in a whole new unit. You know, considering the time, your time, and obviously time is money. So that's what we're doing. This is a known good transmission. This is actually from Chaz. We parted out I believe it was a 760 turbo he had. And he put the motor in his green wagon. So that's the plan today. We got, how many gallons? We got 20 gallons of transmission fluid to fill it and to flush it, because I have no idea what the fluid in there looks like, or if there's any in there. We have some selector shaft seals. We have a rear main seal, because obviously we should do that while we're here. Anyway, enough talking. We're going to clean up this transmission. I really want to make this nice and clean before we put it in, because why not? We have it out. Let's clean it. I'm pretty sure you never heard of this stuff. I don't really know what it is, but it's called cosmoline remover. It says it's for removing cosmoline and other petroleum-based transit coatings. I think back in the day, maybe they coated vehicles in something, but they don't anymore. But this stuff is awesome for taking off grime and grease and oil. Awesome for heavy oil leak cars. I'm going to hose this down, and you guys are going to be amazed how clean it's going to look when I'm done. Well, here's my setup. Got the fan going on it, because that cosmoline cleaner is, it's nasty stuff. I'm tempted to bring this into the power washer, but it's going to be a pain on this to get it up that ramp. And it's pretty clean. I think it's clean enough. We got all the major crud off. I might just hit some of those missing spots once it's in, but that's good enough. We just want to be able to see leaks. If there are going to be any leaks, we want them to be visible. That's really the purpose of this. So let's continue. Okay, we got to start doing some actual work now. So, I don't know why I have a drip there. Better make sure that's, oh, no, that's from the oil. Anyway, it's been a little while since I dropped the transmission in one of these, but I'm thinking drive shaft, shift the bushings, dipstick. Does it bolt up there? No, it doesn't. So it's just bell housing, starter. We may install an engine support, because the third engine mount is sort of the trans mount. The engine might rock back a little bit, but that actually might be okay. Or this one does have this rubber damper still there, and it's actually contacting the pan. I thought there's supposed to be some clearance there. Anyway, we'll see how that goes, but enough talking. Well, let's get started. Well, I was about to remove the transmission, and I remembered there is something I forgot. Torque converter bolts. Duh. So we already have the starter out. That's most of the work done. We're just gonna turn the engine over, get all those torque converter bolts, then we can raise it up, get the transmission out. I'm having a little bit of an issue with this jack. It won't go up all the way. I'm not sure what's going on, and it's got, unfortunately, the wrong air fitting on it for me to use the airline. I don't know if you need air to make it all go all the way up. I used to have one that would go in 2 stages, up and then more up on a smaller piston. I don't know what happened to that trans jack. So anyway, let's get this torque converter bolts. I'm being silly. On a red block, you can take out the torque converter bolts from the bottom of the engine once you have that brace out, not through the starter. You actually can't access them through the starter. And I did have the coupler for the trans jack, so now I can go all the way up. That's gonna make things a lot easier. So let's take care of all that. I'm not sure that came up in the stop motion there, but I'm counter holding on the crank pulley to crack those torque converter bolts loose. And the crank pulley loosened up twice, which means there's no way that crank pulley was fully torqued. So before we leave today, we're going to have to take the water pump pulley off, remove that upper timing cover, install that crank torquing tool, or counter hold, so that we can properly check this crank bolt, because if that obviously comes loose while we're driving, that's gonna be a problem. Anyway, torque converter bolts are out. Let's get the jack in. You can already see the transmission starting to separate. We're gonna get this sucker out. Well, I've been at it for a while now, much longer than that stop motion, and I cannot get this torque converter to seat. I've tried playing with the old transmission, playing with the torque converter, looking at how it lines up and seeing if I can learn anything from that one. That one, I can take it out, I can put it in. I know I've struggled with this in the past when I was a newbie and I left the torque converter attached to the flex plate and then I had to remove it and install it. I just can't get it in. So I'm thinking that maybe because of the angle of the transmission, because the torque converter is actually, gravity is pulling it down. So where it is mating in here, it's a little actually cockeyed. I'm gonna try putting the transmission on the ground with the tail shaft flat on the ground and maybe pushing down on the torque converter. It'll work, because it's probably been almost an hour and I gotta drive this car out today, so I've gotta figure something out. So let's try it. So that's the trick. You gotta get it like this, and then you just wiggle it and keep pushing it, and it'll just, actually what I was doing was kind of picking it up and slamming it down. Now when I say slam, it's a calibrated slam. It's not a real forceful slam. It's just the right amount of slam where if I missed, I'm not going to bend those little teeth or the tabs, whatever they are. But that's what you got to do. So I marked the bell housing roughly where the slots are, marked the torque converter roughly where the slots are, and then I'm picking it up and dropping it right in that range. Again, not too hard, but not too soft until it just hits that right spot and it falls in. That's how you do it. Okay, well, I just wasted so much time. I'm really pretty annoyed, but let's keep going. Okay, we're finally almost ready. You saw how I swapped over the solenoid. I didn't realize we were missing that. Got the dipstick tube out. That was a little harder than the other one, but I got it out, and the threads are not mangled. I still need to replace the selector shaft seals. And then once we install it, we are going to fill it with fluid, push some fluid through it, do a little mini flush I don't want to run it too long with whatever's been sitting in here for a long time. And at that point, then we're going to make sure the pan's not leaking. I don't think it is because it wasn't too dirty. The pan itself wasn't too crusty when I was cleaning it up. I mean, a little bit. I'm not sure what this bracket right here is. And the annoying thing is, to remove it, I got to take off this transmission mount. And that's actually what's bolting down the tail shaft. I don't want to disturb that gasket and create a leak. I mean, probably I'm overthinking it, but I believe I have had one where I replaced this and then I would get a seepage through those bolt holes. It wasn't terrible, but anyway, I'm not sure what this is. Someone tell me. I just can't think if that would be bolted to the exhaust. I'm just not sure. We're probably just going to leave it how it is. Or maybe cut it off. I don't know. Maybe remove it. I'm not sure yet. So that's the plan. This is just taking way longer than I anticipated. There's all these little details you forget about. That's how it goes. Anyway, enough talking. Let's get back to work. Gotta say, that is the easiest time I've ever had installing a transmission. Pretty much just lined up, that's it. So, torque converter bolts are all tight. Tightened the crank bolt. I just used the wrench here to wedge, and I just tightened it with that long 1/2 inch. So that's plenty tight. And I'm pretty sure that I have this bracket on backwards. I can't even remember how it goes. I'm kind of losing steam here, so I gotta go back and review. I think it's on the wrong way, so I'll probably have to remove that little Jesus clip and fix that. I'm not sure which bushing is meant to go here, because I'm pretty sure it doesn't just sit in this hole. But that hole is too big for the bushing I have, so I might need to get that. I do need to take these starter bolts back out so I can get the dipstick tube back in. Got both those selector shaft seals in. And this mount here is for the exhaust. The only odd thing is that it doesn't really line up with it, but maybe that's bent. I don't know, but that's probably what that is. I mean, I'm sure it's what that is, because there you go. So maybe we'll see if the downpipe can be brought up. Not sure. Other than that, we're going to get the drive shaft bolts in, figure out where this thing is supposed to go. I'll look at the pictures I took before, get the dipstick tube in, and we'll get these cooler lines back on. It's looking pretty good. Definitely, I think we're definitely going to finish today. Knock on wood. All right, I got those last two bell housing bolts in. Unfortunately, I forgot to disconnect the kickdown cable. When I dropped the transmission, we broke it, but that's okay. Wasn't planning on reusing it anyway. So we got the new one in. Just need to disconnect the linkage, install the new one. We're gonna pour a gallon of fluid in, maybe run it for just a few moments, check level. I'm not sure when they're totally dry how much they need. I think it's about a gallon to get to the point where you can see something on the dipstick. But that might depend on if the torque converter is totally drained or not. So let's move on. All right, looks like 6 quarts was the sweet spot. It's about halfway on the cold hash mark. So let's just let it warm up a little bit, check for leaks, and then we'll drive it. This thing definitely still has some piston slap. You can hear that. But motor should go a while longer. When I was doing the oil pump and the bearings, you know, they had that wear, but nothing so crazy. I mean, it was some wear. I have a feeling those pistons are probably pretty worn, or I guess maybe that's the cylinder walls. Or maybe it's just the skirts, I'm not sure, but yeah, you can hear it. When it first starts up and it's cold, you can hear it. I think when it warms up, it goes away. Anyway, let's let it get warm, check for leaks, check the fluid again, take it for a test drive. Okay, it's looking good so far. All of our fittings and seals are not the source of any leaks. The solenoid, I was a little worried because we had to reuse those O-rings. Didn't have those, but it looks dry now. Obviously, we're going to test drive it. Well, we got our 2 cooler fittings here. I think that one is just old fluid or PB blaster or whatever. I don't think it's wet. So it's looking good so far. Let it warm up a little bit more. We'll take it on a drive. And hopefully we're going to enjoy a car that's a lot quieter, because it shifted just fine before, but it had that terrible noise. I think that was broken fins in the torque converter. I don't think we're going to get a chance, but it'd be interesting to cut apart the old one and see, but I don't think that's going to be on the menu, at least certainly not today. So let's take it for a drive. That sounds to me like the flex plate. I just don't understand, if it's the flex plate, why does it only get noisy when load increases? If you drive it gently, you really don't hear anything. So it's not just like an RPM thing. It's only when it has some load. Here's the other weird thing. If I shut it off, listen carefully to the noises when it starts. You notice there's that little clunk, metallic clack. See right there? And there it was again. And you hear how slowly the starter turns over? I'm wondering if somehow the starter is rubbing against the flex plate. I didn't take too good of a look at the flex plate. I can just pop that lower trans cover off and look at it, but that's what I think is happening. And that little noise we hear, I think it's the Bendix not returning. You know, there's a little arm that pushes out the pinion on the starter to engage with the flywheel, and then it's supposed to retract. I think maybe it's not retracting. What I can't explain is, if it's not retracting, why don't we hear it all the time? What about load or RPM makes any difference for the flex plate? I mean, maybe the flex plate will flex a little bit, you know, under really high RPM, but I don't know. Something weird is happening, but there's still an issue. The other weird thing is that at first it was very quiet, and then it started acting up. The first few minutes of test driving. So I don't know, but we're done for the day. Otherwise, my partner is gonna kick my butt. So we're done for the day. I don't know. The mystery continues. I think I'm gonna try a junkyard starter. Anyway, that's it for today's video. I think I found something here. I take off the cover. Look at the clearance here between the ring gear and the engine. And then look on this side. There is very little clearance, and in fact it looks like some of that material has been clearanced away by the ring gear. Look at the ring gear here. Look at that. That is shiny metal. That is where the flex plate has rubbed against the engine block. I have a suspicion that due to the low oil pressure, the thrust washer and the crankshaft is worn and it's sucking the ring gear in a little bit. Or alternatively, maybe someone was in here at some point before and they did not install the shim between the crankshaft and the ring gear. That's all I can think of right now, but that's what's happening. I can't exactly explain why it's happening under load only, but look at that. It's rubbing. It's a shiny rub mark. Let's turn it over by hand. See what it sounds like. What is going on? This is just too weird. Once I start turning it over, look at that gap. That gap enlarges, becomes bigger. But then when the engine's running, I believe the whole ring gear is being pushed forward. I think that is play in the crankshaft. And I wonder if I could even push the crankshaft forward or lever it, or maybe I need to have someone start the car and rev it while I'm underneath. What I don't understand is, why is it load dependent? Why can't you just rev it at idle? Why do you have to brake boost it? But look at that. Yeah, it's been rubbing. Ay, ay, ay. What are we going to do for this? Okay, guys, I just verified it's playing the crankshaft. So if I get my pry bar here against the crank pulley, watch this. That moves out like a millimeter or two. And then we get to this situation where there's very little clearance. When I turn the motor over by hand a few times, it moves back. And then if I pry against the sway bar again, watch this. Yeah, that is playing the crankshaft. What a bummer. I guess if we really wanted to, we could probably replace that thrust washer, but man, that's a lot more work.